Video diary, P.R.O.B.E Director Giles, 9th of January 2021. Liz came in today with a personal request. It's not like her. In all the years we've known each other, she's never once asked me for help. She's always been the one in control, no matter what the situation. Clearly things were serious. I promised her I'd do all I could to help, and she told me her problem. Liz had heard from Simon, her son from an old relationship. He'd phoned her in a panic. His daughter Elizabeth had been kidnapped in the night. This all came to me as a shock. I didn't even know Liz had a son, let alone a granddaughter. Still, my personal grievances about the trust between us aside, she needed my help. After all we'd been through, I wasn't going to let her down. The first 48 hours of any kidnapping case are critical. To speed up the search, Liz needed P.R.O.B.E.'s access to the MOD surveillance network. That wasn't easy without the proper paperwork, and even if Sir Andrew helped, we couldn't get approval quickly. Luckily, we have Maxie to get past this sort of thing. She created a backdoor into the system using a photo of Elizabeth to access facial recognition. The first hit showed Elizabeth in normal places, in the supermarket with her mother, being picked up from nursery and what have you. Only a partial match taken in the early hours of the morning gave us something to go on. Security footage from a service station on the M1 shows a girl matching Elizabeth's description in the back of a car with 2 male drivers. The services weren't too far from Cambridge, where Elizabeth was taken, so the evidence seemed to match up. The last of the footage showed the car heading north. We ran the plates on the vehicle and got a hit on the police database. Stolen. Chasing another lead, we followed the car's journey using its CCTV trail. It ended up on the outskirts of Nottingham, Sherwood Forest of all places. At this point, Liz started to remember an old P.R.O.B.E case. Sightings of Robin Hood in the local newspaper caught her attention. When she and Louise investigated, they discovered a sorceress had taken up residence deep in the woods. The sorceress had been conjuring illusions to lure young children away from the footpaths and into her domain. It was the hocus-pocus deal. Take the children and feast on their youth, making the sorceress forever young. Liz and Louise confronted the sorceress at an ancient stone circle. While Liz distracted the sorceress, Louise ensured the children she had taken escaped before her spell was cast. For good measure, Liz destroyed the sorceress's grimoire, robbing her of the complex incantations she needed to conduct the spell. The sorceress managed to escape justice, and due to her advanced age, Liz assumed she'd seen the last of her. Following a hunch, Liz led us to the area of the forest the sorceress had last taken residence. Sure enough, the place was back in business. Liz cried out when she saw what was happening. The sorceress and her 2 henchmen had tied Elizabeth to a post in the centre of the stone circle, the poor child's mouth gagged with a dirty cloth. Liz learned the sorceress had never forgotten their last meeting. She'd spent the intervening years clinging on to life, searching for another grimoire containing the complex spell she required. The years hadn't been kind to the old witch. Her skin had more creases than an old sofa, and those teeth! While her body had withered, her powers had lost none of their potency. Her 2 henchmen had no free will of their own. She'd used them to see that Elizabeth was the first child taken to be drained of their youth. The ultimate revenge. Liz, having tracked her down, only made things sweeter for the old crone. She seemed to revel in Liz's despair. Well, that was enough procrastinating for me. I made for Elizabeth, hoping to free her before the goons got to me. In hindsight, it wasn't the best idea. I can still feel the beating they gave me. I'd only managed to loosen the bond around one of Elizabeth's hands, but it was enough. While I was being pummeled by the thugs, Elizabeth set herself free and whacked one of them around the head with a nearby log. Remarkable ingenuity for a child of her age. The attack didn't do much to the stocky thug, but it distracted him long enough for me to fight back. I overpowered the other goon and delivered a swift kick as he went after Elizabeth. While this was all going on, Liz tackled the sorceress. Although almost 30 years had passed since their original encounter, Liz had lost none of her sprightliness. Less could be said for the old crone. Without her henchmen, she was practically defenceless. Liz marched over to her in a rage and snatched the grimoire from her hands. I'm surprised the sorceress didn't come off worse. Liz had been fuming on the trek through the forest. Losing Elizabeth had really brought out her temper. Still, Liz wasn't letting the sorceress off easily. The police arrived and carried her away. The officers reckoned that she was the oldest collar they'd ever had. Now everyone was safe, we took Elizabeth home to Cambridge. During the journey, I had the time to talk to Elizabeth. She's extremely bright for her age. She has a good life ahead of her, and if she's anything like her grandmother, she'll be a superstar. Liz stayed behind to have some quality time with Simon and Elizabeth. I can't blame her. Families are precious. Every memory a treasure. Back to the office for me. Since I got back, we've had 3 new cases already. Plenty to keep me occupied. The kettle's boiling. Time for a nice pot of tea. Giles, out.